Hey there, Internet friends, and welcome to the third episode of That Ultimate Video Game List Show. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey from ThatNerdySite.com, and this is the show where each season me and a panel of friends try to create the ultimate top 20 video game list with two main bits of criteria. Only one game per franchise, and only one game per console. Joining me on this inaugural season are three of my fellow nerds from That Nerdy Site, Logan Wilkinson,
Hey there.
Cameron Abbott,
What's going on?
and Frank Bazzani.
What's up, everybody?
What's up, guys?
What's up, everybody?
We are launched now. Back when we
Yes,
recorded
we're
the
live.
first couple episodes, That Nerdy Site was still kind of being kept under wraps, but we are live.
We've been birthed.
We are out there. We have a Patreon. We have
Mhm.
a YouTube channel. We have a bunch of different podcast
We're
feeds.
Twitch affiliates now. We're big boys out here.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Thanks
You
a
can
lot
find
to
this-
you guys for making that happen.
Woo woo. Yeah. The Twitch stream over the launch weekend got us halfway there, and then I did some streaming of Outer Worlds that got us the rest of the way. So yeah, you can go follow us and subscribe on twitch.tv/thatnerdysite. You can find this show each week on podcast services and now on YouTube at That Nerdy Site and everywhere you can find podcasts, pretty much. We got it on Spotify now. We're on iTunes, all those fun places. So please rate, review, like, and subscribe everywhere you can to help us get some traction as we continue rolling this thing out. If you enjoy the chaos that you're about to hear, you can always support us at patreon.com/thatnerdysite and help us continuing to bring you these fun shenanigans. The way the show works is like this. Each week, the panel will take turns adding a round of games to the list. Once a game is added, all other games from that franchise and console are out of the running. Games can be submitted for any console they've been released on, including remasters, but collections of games are not allowed. Additionally, each panelist has a veto that they can use to shoot down a game when it is submitted, keeping all other games of that franchise or console in the running. As an example, last week, Frank submitted Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2, and Cameron shot it down. So Cameron's veto is out, and Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2 and the PlayStation, or Tony Hawk's games are still out there in the running, and the PlayStation 1 games are still out there in the running. Once all 20 games have been selected, we will shift into ranking the list, and the top game at the end of everything will be retired into our Hall of Fame. So as a recap to bring you up to speed on where we are, in the first episode, first round, Frank brought in Persona 4 Golden on the Vita. I brought in Final Fantasy VI on the Game Boy Advance. Logan brought in The Last of Us for the PlayStation 3. And Cameron brought us Bioshock on the Xbox 360. Then last week, as I mentioned already, Frank proposed Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2, but it was vetoed. The other games from last week are God of War on the PlayStation 4. That was mine. Logan's was Sonic the Hedgehog 2 on the Sega Genesis, and Cameron brought us Pokemon Soul Silver on the Nintendo DS. So that brings us up to speed. We have 7 games on the list currently, as Frank's was vetoed. And kicking off this week, we're going to have Logan. So Logan, hit us. What are we starting off round 3 with?
Yeah, I've thought about a lot of different things. There are 4 kind of 5 big ones that have been bouncing in my head, that I've been thinking about at least since episode 2, but a few of them since episode 1, that I kind of knew would be my second or third ones I would go at. But I think ultimately I'm going to do Mario Galaxy 2 for the Wii. And this is one that I thought could be potential. It's a big potential fight, obviously. Not so much for the Wii, I think, as much for the Mario aspect. But I think the Galaxy games are one game, 1 and 2. They're 2 is slightly better, but they're really just one thing. I think they're about as close to perfect as a video game can get. I think Galaxy 2 is the best Mario game. I would say pretty full stop. But even if you don't think it is that, I think it's impossible not to view those games as just incredible achievements and just unimaginable amounts of fun. And as somebody who grew up playing 3D Mario games and not the 2D ones, it is, I think, for me at least, kind of the culmination of where that series has been going from Mario 64 to Sunshine to then Galaxy. And they're just joy, they're goofy, they're silly, they're tongue-in-cheek, they have an awareness and a reverence for the past, but also kind of willing to do like their own twist on it. it avoids a lot of the things that I didn't love about Mario Odyssey. It is just there. Galaxy 2 is a great video game. I think anybody can really see that, but I think for me what it does is it captures kind of that essence of what makes Mario games great. The ability to kind of appeal to everyone, but also have this kind of extra layer or layers of dimension and depth to them for people who've been with that series for years, people who loved Mario, who grew up with Mario games. And so my nomination is going to be Mario Galaxy 2 for the Wii.
Interesting. Our first go round at Mario, because that is, I know, one that I think is, in terms of franchises at least, one of the most contentious out there.
I would say one of two, maybe three series that are
Yeah.
Can I just? I would like Logan, explain to me the issues you had with Odyssey, and I would like to hear those before I make any arguments. Go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, I think for me, Mario Odyssey is my. I don't think Mario Odyssey is my least favorite 3D Mario game because I think Sunshine is out there. But I have said that I think Mario Odyssey is the least creative and least original Mario game. Like I think Sunshine, even though it doesn't nail it a lot of the times, or even some of the times, whatever you want to call it, at least is brimming with like these weird kind of creative ideas and just like this kind of very strange energy, right? And like to me, that's what Mario games are about. This kind of weirdness to them, kind of like zany creativity. And Mario Odyssey felt very safe. It felt like a very safe Mario game to make. It felt like the least kind of creative original Mario game in the 3D era, right? Whereas like Mario 64 came out and like blew the doors off of like what a video game could be, right? Like it basically invented a 3D platformer, right? And then Sunshine came out and was just like weird as shit. And then for me at least, Mario Galaxy came out and like again like reinvented 3D platforming in terms of like the physics mechanics and the gravity and just like the worlds and the colors and the fun and the sensations and everything about it. And then Odyssey came out and it felt very much like if they had done Super Mario 64, the sequel, 20 years later, and it wasn't as cool as the first one. I'm on the record saying like I don't love a lot of the worlds in Mario Odyssey. I think only like one or two like I actively dislike, but I think most are just fine. I only really love one or two, which is like a problem in a Mario game where like that's such a big element of like love in each kind of area you go to, each kind of environment you interact with, and the color palette and all that kind of stuff. I think that the music in Mario Odyssey is cool, but I think for me at least it's largely two or three things, and a lot of it just kind of fades away after that. I think that a lot of the mechanics introduced in Mario Odyssey are interesting, but I only loved maybe one or two. Like I think Cappy ultimately works out, but like I think that's kind of it. I think that it is a game that to me it is like the Fallout 4 argument, where it's like it feels like a game that was made in a vacuum, and like didn't recognize not just like how 3D platformers have been made in the last like 5, 6, 7 years, but like how 3D platformers have evolved within the series itself. It felt like it should have been the second like 3D Mario game and not the fourth like mainline one, fifth if you want to count Galaxy 1 and 2, right? But it's like it very much felt of the past. It very much felt like it was playing it safe. It very much felt like it was kind of this more traditional game, and I think that's a shame both in the context of the Mario series as a whole, as a 3D branch of it, and then also in terms of like what Nintendo did with Breath of the Wild, which like I don't love Breath of the Wild. I'm on the record of saying that, but like I do think it's at least like a different kind of Zelda game, whereas to me, Mario Odyssey didn't feel like that. It's a lot of kind of my critique of that game. And like, this is also saying like, it's still fun. I still enjoyed it. It's still my top like 5, I think, of the year for that year. But it's noticeable to me that like a Mario game, a 3D Mario game wasn't in my top 3 or making a run from like my top game of the year kind of list. It just wasn't.
Wow.
I would jump in. So basically, I would jump in and say a lot of your frustrations with Super Mario Odyssey, like I could basically copy and paste my responses or those responses onto Super Mario Galaxy personally.
Sure.
Or especially Galaxy 2. Like I remember the first Galaxy coming out at a time where, the fervor of the Wii was out there, and I played it and enjoyed it, and it was a nice little. It felt like a nice evolution of the Super Mario 64 kind of formula and mentality. But by the time Super Mario Galaxy 2 came out, I think largely moved on from the Wii. I went back and played it, but it's completely forgettable to me at this point. And I think to kind of the last thing you touched on of like a Mario game not being in your top three, like a Mario game, like Odyssey was in my top 10 that the year it came out, but because Mario has like just completely given up on any kind of story and it's just the gameplay, and my focus tends to be on compelling stories in games, as I know yours is as well, oftentimes, Logan. Like that's why Mario doesn't crack my top 10 a lot anymore, or top 5 or whatever, because it does still crack the top 10. But like just the gameplay alone being like a slight evolution of the things they've been doing since Super Mario 64, um, makes them fun games for me. And you know, I have no intention of vetoing it because I don't care that much really about Mario. But my Mario pick would have been Odyssey on the Switch, just as I think the biggest things I could hurdle against Odyssey would have been that it's not a game that is replayable in the manner that a Super Mario 64 or even a Galaxy are, where it's like, hey, yeah, if you wanna do like a full like 120 star playthrough of Super Mario 64, that's easy enough to do. If you want to do a full like 999 star playthrough of Super Mario Galaxy, or Super Mario Odyssey, that's going to take forever, and that's not a game worth, you know, in my opinion, worth jumping back into. But I got 999 stars in that game over Extra Life Weekend a couple years ago when we were all at Alex's house in yeah, it was the 2017 Extra Life. That was when I
I remember that. Yeah.
got 999. So yeah, I poured a ton of time into Odyssey and Galaxy. Really, like both Galaxies actually, for the most part, as are I would say like most of the Wii's catalog for me, just completely forgettable because they're not something I can easily go back and revisit because so much stuff is just locked into the Wii's Wiimotes and hardware and all that stuff and the motion controls, and I don't have an interest in really going back and diving into those games either. So yeah, it's like I appreciate you having the same issues as you do with Super Mario Odyssey, and it was just very interesting for me as I heard you talk about those things. I was like, yeah, that's pretty much exactly how I would describe Galaxy 2, really, because I don't dispute the putting it in there as like the best Super Mario game. It's just one that didn't resonate with me, and having been so long since I've touched it and haven't gone back to it, it's one that I'm just like I couldn't even tell you any of like the worlds in that one or any of the bosses or anything like that. Whereas at least with Super Mario Odyssey, and admittedly, like as I think through Super Mario Odyssey and what the argument I would have made for that, if I'd put it forth on the list, like I don't have many eventful and memorable things. I did think it did. I remember thinking at the time it did boss battles that year better than Breath of the Wild did, in my opinion. But even there, like some of the most iconic moments I can remember of Odyssey would have been like New Donk City, and that's about it. So I don't
really. You didn't think the moon was incredible?
I mean, the moon was fine. It like
the boss sequence with Bowser in the moon was awesome.
All of them were fun in the time that I played them, but like none of them have really lasted the test of time with me in the way that like for the sake of this list, I would say like Super Mario 64 is probably the more iconic selection, given what it did at the time and all that stuff.
But I would like to pose something. So for me, in my
Cameron's
plethora,
regretting having used his veto on.
I was about to say, just to clarify, like I don't have a veto anymore, right?
Yeah.
Like it's gone.
Correct.
Okay.
This was going to happen too. I knew this was going to happen.
Yeah, Tony Hawk. Like I sniped Tony Hawk before realizing that Tony Hawk was the mid boss, like the mini boss, and not the final boss, which is putting Mario Galaxy 2 as like the Mario game. Like if it's the Wii game, that's fine, but as like the definitive Mario game that we want to say top 20 games of all time, and it's Mario Galaxy 2. Like I could see the argument for Mario Galaxy taking like issuing what problems Sunshine had and moving them forward with kind of going back to a lot of the basics, but then evolving those in a different way, especially with the Wiimote. Galaxy 2, like like I don't see, like, I really have a hard time understanding the the modus operandi of choosing the sequel, which fewer people played, was
Just
reviewed
I mean,
well, but
I mean,
it's not.
just
It doesn't have like the legacy or
I
the
think that
touchstone that the others do. Any of
I
them.
think that's disingenuous to say it reviewed well. Like it's a 97 on Metacritic. I got a 10 out of 10 masterpiece from IGN. Like the game was critically acclaimed, universally acclaimed. Like it is one of the most. I mean, it's one of the highest reviewed
Oh,
games
sorry.
of all time. Like, it's like,
I apologize for not putting enough emphasis on it. Was reviewed well. It
yeah,
was
like, I
reviewed
mean, like, it very
extremely
much was
well.
reviewed,
It's a
yes.
critical success. It's an absolute darling of a game. Okay.
Yeah, like it's a thing for me where it's like to me it is
I'm
like
I'm not
some
disputing its quality. I'm
no.
disputing its legacy.
To me it's a thing of again like I view very much Galaxy 1 and 2 as the exact same game. It's just continuation of one game. And if you ask me, but I can't do that. I have to pick one game. Galaxy 2 is a better game. They just refined the things that were kind of somewhat not whatever in one. It's a bit better of a game, right? Like in the same way where it's like Uncharted 1 or 2, or like even like Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2, like the game's just like refined a few things and it's like better because of it, right? Like Galaxy 2 is a better game than Galaxy 1 is. It's just like objective from like how the game plays. It just plays more enjoyable. They got rid of some of the dumb mechanics and just like made a more enjoyable experience. As a touchstone thing, like again, like I think the Galaxy games were a very big touchstone for that Wii era. Like nothing, I'd argue, no Mario game will ever be the thing that Mario 64 was, because Mario 64 basically reinvented how we play video games. Like we're just not going to have that moment again, I don't think. But I do think that Galaxy is for me at least, the superior Mario game out of the kind of 3D lineage, right? And like all of Trevor's points about Odyssey are totally valid. And like this is to me where it's like the Mario series is arguably like the most subjective series of a video game franchise, where it's like, because you could maybe don't even like the 3D franchise, maybe you like only 2D Mario games, right? So then it's the whole thing like just an entire branch is wiped out, right? And it's like, or maybe you only like 3D and don't like 2D, so that branch is wiped out. Like, and then even among the 3D games, like there are people who love Sunshine, people who love 64, people who love Galaxy, like me, people who love Odyssey and don't like the other ones. Like it's a series that I feel like is almost fundamentally subjective in a way that like a lot of other video game series aren't, because they play and are a lot more similar than the Mario games are, which is one of the strengths of the Mario games. It also becomes, when you have to like pick the Mario game, makes it a lot messier. But like I think for me at least, when I like, yeah, like what Trevor said and Cameron to an extent about the Wii is true. Like the Wii is a wasteland in a lot of ways. It's a generation that didn't age well, but I think when I think of the Wii, I mean, like, not kind of Wii Sports or whatever. I think of basically two video games, and it's Galaxy 1 and 2. Those are the Wii games I think of. Those ones that stand as, like, these are great video games, like, irrespective of anything else, or any other console on anything, these are great video games, right? It's like that thing for me where it's like, why I beg Nintendo every single day to, like, remaster, remake, just put them on the Switch Virtual Console. Just put them on anything. Just put them to where we can play them now. Like, let people experience these games again, because it's been 10 years and like not enough people did at the time, but more than that, like they're so good, and I feel like they like are in danger, like kind of Trevor said, of being forgotten because they're on this hardware that's like basically impossible to play and enjoy now. I don't love the motion controls in general, but I think it works really, really well in the Galaxy games. Like I think it actually utilizes that tech in a way that makes it very fun, that makes it very intuitive, that makes it a rewarding experience and a rewarding part of that game. Like I don't think it is distracting like it is in a lot of other video games, and like I've heard people say it is in the Wii Zelda game. I think it works really well. I think that the game is just brimming with ideas and this kind of creativeness that is almost threatening to kind of run off the leash, but never quite does. And I think that, I mean, for me at least, it is the Mario game that I think of when I think of Mario game, in terms of like, this is a great game still, right? Where it's like, obviously I can rant and rave and gush about Mario 64 like I assume all of us could, but also it's that thing of like, it's impossible for me to speak impartially about Mario 64. That game is probably not as good as I remember it being, but like, I think Mario Galaxy very much still is. and that's my pick for Mario Galaxy. Like it's just a game that I think is legitimately a masterpiece, and still is. Whereas I think 64 is rough around the edges, and I think that the N64 as a console in general is just kind of bad, and so I think Galaxy holds up better.
Cool. I can't. I wanted you to explain it. You've explained it. I can't do anything or say anything after this point.
Yeah, I mean,
Frank,
Trevor and
it's
Frank,
up
I
to you.
guess, yeah.
How are you feeling about it?
There is a few things I definitely have to say, I guess, about Galaxy 2, and because I think like with the Wii in general and a lot of the just that entire kind of library, I'm not a huge fan of, and I definitely don't love the motion controls and even how they're kind of like even you said like I don't love the motion controls kind of in the Mario context either, and I Trevor hit the nail on the head for a lot of kind of what I wanted to say too, where like I definitely like I kind of played it a little bit later, I think, and I don't know if that really affected necessarily my opinion of it, but I never even finished it because I just like in 1 and 2 just like blend together so much for me personally, and like Trevor said, like trying to kind of remember some of these bosses or some of these levels is kind of hard for me specifically. But I do kind of personally favor like 64 or even like Odyssey in this case. But I also, honestly, I don't really mind that being the representation for Mario or being the representation for the Wii game. I do think it is Galaxy 1 and 2, I think would be some of the stronger games on kind of that platform in general. So I don't really mind that being the representation on the list in this case.
Yeah, the I mentioned Super Mario Odyssey was my pick, but that like I also am realizing I had forgotten that I had Paper Mario and the Thousand Year Door on as a GameCube game. Um, uh, like that and Super Mario RPG, I think are certainly and admittedly like yeah they're not in the mainline Mario platformer genre, but I look back on those games so much more fondly because they have a story component to them. I think largely and the RPG ness of them compared to just like oh really good platforming. So yeah, those are a couple other games that I at least wanted to throw out there as like honorable mentions in this. But yeah, like Frank said, and like I kind of mentioned earlier, I don't care that much about Mario in general to pick a fight on this. Um, so I also have no issue with Super Mario Galaxy 2 being our Mario representation on this list. Though I'm sure some people in the comments and whatnot will take it out
Nope.
on Logan.
Yep. It is. It is on.
I mean,
It is the way it is. Let's.
I mean, it's. I think again, like Mario and Zelda are gonna be the two that I feel like people like. Those are the two like third rail franchises out here probably, and it's like they're very subjective franchises. And like I stand by. I mean, like it's funny too. Like we all mentioned a game that none of us ultimately like were willing to go to bat for. It's like all of us mentioned Mario 64, and then none of us were willing to go to the mat for it. But it's like yeah, like Mario 64 is a video game that like is phenomenal, right? But like I just
I can't
think,
go to the mat for it though. Like I can't.
You
I don't.
can
I
go
don't
to
have
the
a
mat, yeah.
veto. I can't
yeah,
really
you
do
can go to
anything
that
about
for
it.
it. But like I think that ultimately for me, Galaxy is the better game out of the two. And like we're all like I think in general like we're splitting hairs. Like there is no bad Mario game. They're all great. I think for me just Galaxy is just a one that hit more for me personally, right? Because I think this is a very like subjective series, and so
Yeah, and that's like I with Super Mario Odyssey in particular, I think Odyssey does everything that Super Mario 64 does better.
mm-hmm.
I think
Mm-hmm.
Galaxy probably does all those things better than Super Mario 64. Super Mario 64 gets what it has based off of like its legacy and its place in gaming history.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, the only thing I would put realistically Mario 64 up against over Galaxy 1 or 2 or Odyssey are that it is infinitely easier and quicker to replay.
Yes.
And it's the right size for the game it is, whereas Odyssey is far too long for what it really is if you want to
Yes,
go and do
absolutely.
everything and 100% that game.
Even if it's
Same
even like
same
the
with the
main
Galaxy
storyline is
games, I
still
would say.
pretty long.
They're great, but if you want to go and get all 250 stars or however many it is in Galaxy 1 or 2, it's going to be a slog. because at some point you're just like, okay, I gotta go and do this pitch perfect timing jump to get the 1 star I need in this level that I couldn't find earlier, something like that. Whereas all of those are, I think, pretty well paced and distributed across Super Mario 64.
All right. Well,
Super Mario 64 is not on the list.
Nope.
But Galaxy 2 is.
Galaxy
Everybody's
2.
happy.
All right, let us move on. Cameron can get over the fact that he didn't have his veto anymore to kick that off the list by going into his next pick. So Cam, hit us with what you got for round 3.
I knew this was going to happen though. Like I knew he was going to lose that veto completely.
I know it was a bizarre veto choice again. Like to take out Tony Hawk Pro Skater.
It's gonna be really
Tony
weird
Hawk Pro Skater
if he
2.
doesn't put in a PlayStation
PS1
1 game in its
Yeah.
place.
That's what I was expecting. I'm waiting for it, honestly. If not, I'll just bring Tony Hawk.
Frank said
back
it's just
up.
fucking veto. Yeah.
All right, hit us, Cameron.
all right. Legend of the Dragoon, PlayStation 1.
God, what a.
I know nothing about this game, so I can't fight it one way or another.
I know very little about this game.
I know incredibly little. I mean, make your. I mean, God,
Tell us
make your
why it
pitch,
is the
yeah.
best PlayStation game, Cameron.
God.
Because as we discussed last week, I think all of us immediately are saying, well, now you're the one kicking Symphony of the Night off the list.
Oh shit,
Yeah.
you're right. Symphony. Nope, scratch it. We're going Symphony of the Night. You're right.
Vetoed
right.
his own choice.
Yeah, I sorry, did a quick audible there.
All right.
It's like the first week, but instead of like not verbalizing my like what I was audibling, I am doing it now. Yeah, no, Symphony of the Night. It's Castlevania Symphony of the Night. It's such an incredible game. It has a detailed, rich history of being a longtime Nintendo franchise that made a leap originally onto the Sega Saturn with I don't want to say this wrong, but it's like Rondo of the Blood.
Rondo of the Blood.
Yeah, Rondo of the Blood. But it takes place, and for the first time in ever, you are playing a non-Belmont. You're playing Alucard, somebody introduced in Castlevania 3. I guess technically Castlevania 3 you could play as multiple characters. But you bring on Alucard as the main character. Alucard is taking a stand of like he is taking a stand and a leading role for the first time in the series. It is an incredible game of brilliant game design between the Dracula's Castle and then Dracula's Castle Inverted, which is something you can even completely miss and not even know about if you didn't figure it out or you weren't told about it. You have a variety of weapon types. You have a variety of just as this progress and this growth. And it does something very interesting where at the very beginning, Alucard falls into a trap that strips him of most of his abilities and his equipment. And so it's a very cool way of like rebuilding Alucard's strength through the castle by fighting the monsters that his father has gathered. It has incredible boss designs, but it also starts off with the very end of Rondo of Blood, where Rondo defeats Dracula, and then it kind of flows into there, and then it's like, okay, well, Rondo is now reviving Dracula, and there's this whole mystery of like, why is this happening? Like, what's going on here? And it slowly unravels, and you kind of see the story of, I think you could say in Castlevania 3, you saw like Alucard's part of the story was the story of him being Dracula's son. But I think in Symphony of the Night, you see him, like, you can make the argument that what you're seeing is not him as Dracula's son, but rather as, oh shoot, I just slipped, I believe his mother's name is Lisa. But that also might be me, like, imprinting on that, because my mother's name is Lisa.
Probably Martha. It's a pretty common name for mothers, as I recall.
Yeah, Martha. No, and so I think you see his abilities as a Dhampir, but what you really see is him really taking a stand for humanity for the first time. Not just supporting somebody who's doing this job, but really taking it upon his own hands and being willing to commit, one of the worst sins possible, patricide, for the sake of the promise he made to his mother not to hate humanity. you have an awesome story and a really awesome breakdown of Dracula's motivations and Alucard's motivations clashing with one another, creating an awesome conflict between father and son. The revelation to Dracula at the very end, and then just kind of it leaves on a real high note of Alucard looking at going back into isolation, but instead being joined by other people and making bonds and making human connections and really embracing part of his humanity within his half vampire, half human. So there's so much that goes on in that game. There's so much that is part of such a strong and brilliant legacy that it takes stuff from before, stuff from all the way back to the Nintendo Entertainment System, and brings it forward to the Sony PlayStation in such an awesome and incredible way. And the replayability on that game is so high, and utilizing different tool sets that you have with the different magical items is awesome. I mean, do I need to keep going on, or are we good?
No, I can speak to this one significantly better than I could have spoken to Legend of Dragoon, because I only played Symphony of the Night for the first time like 4 years ago. I played it as part of the short-lived, kind of funny video game book club, and it is to this day the only proper Metroidvania that is either a Metroid or a Vania that I have beaten. And I knew about the inverted castle going into it, so that had been spoiled, but I didn't know how to get to it, and so I relished discovering that for myself. And that was really cool, kind of like figuring out, oh, you got to use this item in this place or whatever to see the the real ending of that game and all that stuff. And it holds up. Playing it, I played it on the. I want to say I probably played it on the Vita. But it holds up it holds up much better than other games of that era because they stayed as a 2D side scroller instead of going the hot new polygonal route that Crash Bandicoot and Final Fantasy VII and all those other games did. That makes them a little bit more of a dated look and feel to go back and revisit. But it is, I mean, yeah, I really enjoyed it. I definitely didn't pull nearly as much from the lore as you did, Cameron, but that's what you do, so I'm not surprised at all. So yeah, I think it's a fitting PlayStation 1 representation on the list, and certainly of the Castlevanias, despite it being the only one I've played, it is also, as I understand it, often touted as the best of the best. Anything to add, Frank? Then we'll come to Logan.
I don't have a ton to add about Symphony of the Night. I know, like you had just said too, like you just played it for the first time about like 4 years ago, but Symphony of the Night is still one of those ones that I haven't played. I definitely am a little bit familiar with it, like, and I have heard about the inverted castle before, which I think is a really cool idea, and how, like, a lot of people were like, oh, I finished Symphony of the Night, but you haven't. Like, that's like the true ending, kind of another whole half of the game almost. I'm definitely cool letting that take the kind of the PS1 spot, or especially even the Castlevania spot on the list, especially just because I know it does kind of have a kind of a history and a legacy, and even kind of is mentioned earlier too, like it is one half of the name Metroidvania. So I mean, I definitely think I could see that kind of deserving kind of the spot on this list of kind of some of the greatest games of all time.
All right, Logan, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I have no beef. I've never played Symphony of the Night like Frank, but I think it is a fairly kind of obvious pick for what will define the PS1 kind of generation era. From that standpoint, I have no real objection with it. It is a beautiful looking game. I think that holds up still. No, like, I think ultimately I'm fine with it. I think it's gonna be on the list. It's great. I would like to say justice for Tony Hawk, but I mean,
yes, that's true. Tony Hawk deserves representation on this
list. Is what it is. Yeah.
Listen, Tony Hawk 64 is still a thing, you guys.
I mean,
no, it's not.
Ultimately, if we really wanted to play the game like this, Frank, you could veto this, and you have the next pick, so you could put Tony Hawk back on the list.
You could fuck him.
I kind of want to just to do it. Like,
just
don't do it, Frank. Don't do it.
Pure vengeance at Cameron, who vetoed his own pick initially.
Well, to be fair, and this is the reason why. Yeah, no, this is the thing. Legend. I've been looking. I've been digging into older games that when people say what games would you want brought up or remade or remastered, and Legend of the Dragoon has always been kind of a favorite of mine. So I've been reading up on it lately. So it was fresh off the top of my head. I was gonna go with a different console, and then you guys put the pressure on me that since I vetoed Frank last week.
Now let me ask you this, Frank. Let me posit you this.
Mm-hmm.
If not now, when? You know
Oh
what I
my
mean?
god! Why?
If not now, when would you use that veto?
I can tell you right now, if
I
he was
honestly
supposed to
don't
use that
know.
veto, he should have
That's
used
the
it.
thing.
On...
That's the thing. Like
this
if
would be
not
the
now,
time.
No, the time would have been when Logan said Mario Galaxy 2.
that's a
I'm
phenomenal
fine with
video
that.
game.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
97 on Metacritic. Yeah, beautiful game.
And you said you were more than fine with Castlevania being the PS1 game.
I mean, I'm definitely fine with it being the Castlevania game. I'm kind of okay with it being the PS1 game, but again, Tony Hawk, Logan makes
It's a better.
kind of strong
Yeah, I'm
case
saying
here.
yeah.
Well, quick question. Can we, with you guys who still have the vetoes, are you able to keep those vetoes until we get to the point where we're actually ranking games?
No. A game can only be vetoed at the time of submission.
I
So
see, okay.
all the games that are already in the list are safe.
That's what I'm saying. Do you need a back pocket veto? That's what I'm gonna say. Let me ask you this. And then I'll end my prosecutorial argument here.
It's not a prosecutorial argument. You're trying to weasel this in. Logan, out of vengeance for me giving you crap about Mario Galaxy 2.
Let me just ask you this, Frank. Can you play as Darth Maul in Symphony of the Night? Because you can in Tony Hawk. That's my, that's my final.
I think you're right. I don't think you can. I don't think you can play as Darth Maul in Symphony of the Night. Even in the inverted castle, I don't think you can play as Darth Maul.
Darth Maul didn't exist when Symphony of the Night came out.
That's a big flaw against. That's a big strike.
Quick thing though, Frank. I mean, last time I checked, you aren't able to do that in Mario Galaxy 2 either.
That's already on the list. That's done. You missed your chance, bro. I'm sorry. You had your shot.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I wasn't out to go ahead and dick over a game.
I definitely want to use the veto here, and I think Logan's kind of right. When else would be a better time? But I think I'll let this one pass.
Thank you.
At least for me. I mean, I know you guys still have vetoes out there. Vetoes are still in play if they want to be used.
It passes through me, Logan. Are you gonna pull the veto card?
Fine.
All right.
It's fine.
Then Castlevania Symphony of the Night makes.
Jeez, is this how you felt last week, Frank? Jeez.
Makes
that sudden
the
panic
cut.
His
rising
game
in your
actually got
chest.
vetoed though. Yeah, it felt worse.
All right. So moving on, Frank, hit us with your pick now.
So I was trying to think of what would be some good picks here, and I definitely think. So I guess let me clarify on mine. With the Xbox One backwards compatibility, did we decide that those were okay because they're backwards compatible, or do those not count specifically?
If you want to pick a 360 game that is backwards compatible and available on the Xbox One, you can pick that for the Xbox One.
Because and then I think that's the one I'm going to decide to go with this week here, and I'm going to get some justice for. I know you're going to support me with this one. Mass Effect 2 is going to be my choice for Xbox One, the best game on there. I know there might not be. I don't know if there's going to be too many objections, but I definitely I researched this one even going in. I made sure Mass Effect 2 was backwards compatible on Xbox One.
I love it.
I also even consulted with what are the other Xbox One games, even exclusives, first parties. Look at it and just comparing this list. We have Forza, we have the Horizon, and also just the regular Forzas. There's Gears of War, there's Halo. And I don't know about you guys, but I definitely a lot of these games don't speak to me personally, and I don't think that they really have the strongest first party kind of lineup going on over there, especially this generation. And Gears of War would probably be what I would make one of the strongest cases for. But I mean, none of these games, to me personally, stand anything against Mass Effect 2, and what is definitely the best in that franchise, and I think tells one of the best stories overall, especially is it fits within the overall trilogy and kind of building that story further. but I think it also has, like, in terms of those games, it has like the strongest overall narrative within one game. Like, you're kind of reborn at the beginning and you're assembling this crew for a suicide mission, and you're assembling a lot of these people that don't really have anything to live for anymore, kind of these mercenaries, these bandits, like, and you get to learn all their backstories and become loyal with them and just build up your ship. And I just really love everything about Mass Effect 2, even the music for when you're mining planets.
Nice.
Oh, I would say this. I definitely support that option, though. Logan, if you have any detrimental things to say about it, go ahead.
I mean, I've never played a single Mass Effect game in my entire life, so I mean, I will easily cede all of my time to Trevor and Cameron and Frank to make their. I mean, like, it's largely whatever to me. I mean, I have nothing bad to say. I've only heard good things about Mass Effect 2, but I have no critique of it.
Yeah, for
It's
me,
fine for me.
I agree with a lot of the points you brought up, Frank, in that um, while I might personally prefer Mass Effect 3, even with its, very controversial ending and all that stuff, I prefer 3 because it is like the end of everybody's story and the culmination of that trilogy. But Mass Effect 2 is arguably a much better standalone title because it is like you have the beginning of the game, and it was the first one I ever played. I played Mass Effect 2 but having not played Mass Effect 1 before because it came out multi-platform, whereas Mass Effect 1 at the time was only on the 360 and I didn't have a 360. So, like, I played Mass Effect 2 where I basically got to make my selections using like the comic that they kind of introduced with that game on the PlayStation 3 version. But I loved it so much that I went back and played the original Mass Effect on PC. So then I was like, well, crap, I can't carry these characters and these choices forward. So finally, ultimately, when it came to when all 3 games came to PlayStation, I went through and like replayed the whole series there and got to kind of carry my Shepard from beginning to end. But Mass Effect 2 is a nice standalone. It is that suicide mission where you are getting your team together and you're, all going out for it. Um, on the flip side, so it's not my favorite of the Mass Effects. It's also not my favorite Xbox One game. In that I haven't played Gears of War 5, but that seemed to go over well. But Sunset Overdrive is the reason I bought an Xbox One, and to this day remains my favorite Xbox One title. And as we touched on a couple weeks ago, I think, or last week, I guess, it is sad that like Insomniac won't get praise with Spider-Man on the PS4 generation, and here they will likely also get overlooked on the Xbox One generation. Despite they're constantly like the the 8.0 to 9.0 kind of range for their games, where it's like they're great, but there's always something a little bit better that kind of steals their thunder. And ultimately, yeah, I'm not going to pit Mass Effect 2 up against Sunset Overdrive because Mass Effect 2 is, a once in a generation type of game. And certainly worthy of being on this list. And I appreciate your gaming the loopholes of the system to get Mass Effect 2 on this list after we talked in the first week about how games like that were getting cut off by losing the PS3 and the Xbox 360 kind of in the 1-2 punch of Last of Us and BioShock. So I appreciate Mass Effect making its way back onto this list in this setting, because as much as I love Sunset Overdrive, I'm not gonna fight it. I'm not gonna fight for it over Mass Effect. I'll just
It is on
calmly
PC too,
I'll just
if they
calmly
wanted to
delete it
PC.
off of my my list on my phone here.
This is the thing for me where it's like, yeah, I mean, you get a bigger argument out of me for like Xbox One stuff, but it's that weird thing, like Frank just said, where it's like, but I can also have them be PC game nominees. So it's like, ultimately, it's like Mass Effect, I feel like, is a series as a whole that is probably deserving of some sort of love. And so even if I have no real personal anything to it, it is obviously one that 3 of the 4 of us love. And that's more than good enough for me to shout out and bring it on the list too.
Anything you want to add?
I will say this. Mass Effect 2 is without a doubt the best Mass Effect game, in my opinion. While Mass Effect 1 had more exploration availability, the tight-knit story, the awesome characters brought in and then developed, but also the ones developed from 1, character progression, story beats, an actually really good way to introduce like DLC characters into the story in a much more like normal way than you would find in just about any other RPG or any other game really. With the ability to kind of utilize these characters who are incredible. I think that it stands above, based off just mechanics and shooting wise, stands above Mass Effect 1. I think story wise and prior to the director's cut, ending wise, I definitely would say that Mass Effect 2 is above it. But also, you have like some really incredible moments in that game where you realize what the Reapers actually do with a race that submits. When you find out what's going on with the Collectors and their relation to the Protheans, you have incredible weapon design that is just bonkers, unbelievable creativity there. You have awesome planet environments that are so just absolutely different from each other versus Mass Effect 1, which was mostly hallways or open areas that were hard to navigate. And then Mass Effect 3, which had, set pieces that I never felt were as fleshed out as Mass Effect 2. So as like a Mass Effect game, I will say Mass Effect 2 is by far the best. And more than it deserves. Like it I guess that's not the right way to put it. It deserves it. It's more than just like deserving of it. It absolutely deserves to be on our list. So Frank, thank you for bringing that.
All right. Well, if it passes by the council, then Mass Effect 2 on the Xbox One makes our list, which brings us to me for the final pick of this week, and I've got a few that I think can be some hot ones. So I'm gonna throw it to I'm gonna shoot it out to the panel. Do you want me to target the Super Nintendo, the PlayStation 2, or the PC?
Oh,
I'm
really curious about what your
PS2.
your PS2 version. I'm very like PS2 games. I'm very curious about.
All right. How about you, Logan?
Do we want to take a guess first?
I mean, like, I would rather you not. I'd rather you do Super Nintendo, just 'cause I'm curious about that one.
All right. So we got 2 votes for PS2 and 1 for Super Nintendo.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, it's up to you, Trevor. Whichever one do you want to do.
Yeah, I think I'll leave that for another time then, because I'm going to go with PC. I'm going to
Okay.
go because as we've discussed, this is basically all PC games, and I am going to throw Portal 2 on the list as the definitive PC game for our console.
My, oh no.
I think Portal 2 takes what was like an interesting tech demo idea in Portal 1 and fleshes it out with just a very fun lore, continually great and deepening puzzles, and like the performances that you get from Elle McLean was great as GLaDOS in the first one, but adding Stephen Merchant in as Wheatley and J.K. Simmons as Cave Johnson, just to like flesh out the like underbelly and the history of Aperture Science, like made that such a an unforgettable experience for me. I didn't originally play it there. I originally played it on PS3, but we were talking a lot beforehand, and Cameron and I are going to go see Jojo Rabbit the day after we record this, and I went and saw that a week and a half ago or something like that. And just seeing Stephen Merchant in there reminded me, like, I want to go back and play Portal 2. And so I went back and played Portal 2 a little bit last week, and goddamn does that game just hold up. It's so much fun. The puzzles are so well designed that, like, if you haven't played in a few years, you go back to them and you can get just as stumped all over again. And yeah, it is one of those things that I think when I think of like great sequels that took the baseline of an idea and just fleshed it out like beyond what anybody could have expected. I think of things like Uncharted, and I think of things like Portal. And I would love to see Valve give us a Portal 3 someday, but because they seem to have issues ever counting to 3, the Portal 2 is just such a great um, like self-contained end cap to that. And I if we never get another Portal game, that's fine because we got Portal 2 and it was phenomenal. Um, that said, like there are a ton of other or PC games that I know that this would pull off the list,
Mm-hmm.
and
Like
and
TurboTax.
TurboTax, Minesweepers out of the running now.
Space Pinball.
Space Pinball, yeah. I mean, like, admittedly, some of the other PC games I'd looked at and considered would have been stuff in like the Civilization series. The Sims, I think, is another certainly iconic franchise. I mean, most something that starts with Sim, I think, has you can't go wrong with most of those games. But yeah, Portal 2 is what I am going for to take the wide world of PC gaming out of the running for the rest of this list.
Jeez. Wow. The episode where I really should have saved my veto. All right.
Oh wow! All right.
No, I honestly, Portal 2, like, I've never been as in love with the Portal series as apparently every other single human being on Earth. Like, I think they're good. But the biggest problem is, like, I'm not a puzzle game guy, so those are constant, like, that's a giant hurdle that I have to get over just to play those games. But as far as its writing goes, as far as it being, like, it is a top tier quality Valve game, it does deserve to be on this list and representing PC, because when it came to PC, it was received so incredibly well. And it was one of the first games to ever actually do a cross-play between a PlayStation console and PC. So, like, as there are so many amazing PC games that could definitely go on here that are actually PC exclusives as well. I really can't, like, outside of personal bias, I can't fault Portal 2 for taking up that spot. It has some incredible writing. I love anything J.K. Simmons' entire, like, audio log in that entire game is just phenomenal.
Yeah, I didn't even mention it, but yeah, some of the great stuff that comes from the PC version is the like level creator that like other fans of Portal 2 created levels, and I remember going back and playing a ton of those and being like, oh my god, like these people took the ideas that Valve came up with and just like figured out, like it was a Mario Maker before Mario Maker kind of thing, where they figured out cool ways to do all that stuff using the rules and the logic of that game, in fun and inventive ways. Some people even, I remember, coming out with like they created their own like little stories, where like, hey, if you play these series of levels, here's the story that's going on across them. And yeah, it's just, I love Portal 2.
I think it's totally good to have it on.
Frank?
I'm definitely 100% cool with having that be on there for the PC game. I mean, as we kind of even just joked about, like, I'm not too like into PC, and I know there is a lot of other great games, but I think kind of just similarly to what we just did with Mass Effect 2 on the Xbox One, like, I think that is a really great standout game that deserves to be on the list, and if this is the way to make it happen, I'm definitely cool with that. I definitely, I really do like that game, and kind of like you were saying, you just went back to it. I recently saw Stephen Merchant in The Good Boys, and it kind of made me want to do the same thing and go revisit the Portal 2 and kind of see all the jokes in there. And as Cameron mentioned too, or I think you did as well, like J.K. Simmons just absolutely knocks it out of the park. I still remember his whole audio log about when life gives you lemons, and still laugh about that.
Oh my gosh.
Like, I really do fully support this game being on the list, so I'm definitely 100% behind it. Yeah, for sure.
All right, Logan, hit me with your dissension.
Yeah, I'm definitely. I've never played Portal, so like that is obviously part of this.
This is a light week in games that Logan has played.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Did Logan even play his pick, Mario Galaxy?
Yeah, but it's weird for me where, in a similar vein to Trevor, where like viewing PC as a catch-all thing, there are a lot of games that get taken off. Like the first and foremost is Gone Home, right? It's basically shut out now, and like I admittedly like love Gone Home less than some people do, other people do. But Gone, like when I think of a PC game, I think of Gone Home first and foremost, because I am somebody who very much like Frank. I think probably like most of us, maybe with the exception of Cameron. I mean, I am not a PC gamer in any means, but Gone Home kind of redefined what the potential of PC gaming could be, what could be out there for that platform and that's kind of those systems. And it was just very much a wake up call. It is obviously a beautiful video game, a beautiful story, beautiful characters in a world that constantly kind of weaves and crawls further and further into your head and into your heart. That's kind of gone. I think of games that can't be almost anywhere else because we've eliminated other platforms. So I think of a game like Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons that I absolutely love and adore. That I played on the PS3, but also is available on the PC. That would now be gone. And Brothers, a game that I again love and adore, to a manner close to Gone Home, if not passionate at times. I think of games that won't necessarily be shut out, but it becomes harder and harder to find a spot to give them a home, right? So games like Rocket League, games like Hellblade, I think of these kind of things. Like I have no animosity or beef towards Portal 2, and in fact will probably ultimately be fine with it, but I'm aware of the fact that we are eliminating essentially the modern era of video games now. With the PS3, Xbox 360, Xbox One, and PS4, and now PC all gone, we've eliminated modern games except for the Switch.
I was gonna say, all the games you mentioned are on the Switch, right? I think.
Brothers isn't gonna be in the Switch.
Brothers isn't, okay. But
no.
Gone Home is, Rocket League is.
Yeah. Hellblade is. Yeah, and like I think.
Is it?
That's.
I knew it was.
Yeah, Hellblade.
Okay.
Hellblade is on the
absolutely.
Switch, yes.
Yeah, and like I think that's all valid, but I think it is a thing for me where it's like there's a lot that's going to get knocked off. And like Trevor kind of said in the first week, I'm not the person saying it, where it's like there's a lot that we're closing the door on here. Aside from like all the other dumb PC game shit that like people actually care about that we don't, but it's like, yeah, Sims and Civilization are just going to be gone. And any of those kind of games. Ultimately, I don't feel like I can justify knocking off Portal 2 because a game I've never played. I have no beef against it. The pick itself, I almost certainly love every second of Portal 2.
To your point on Gone Home, it's not a point I can make directly on Portal 2, but I, like for the original Portal, it very much did kind of like it made people rethink what PC games can be, what a first-person shooter effectively can be, because it was basically a first-person puzzler that was largely unheard of at the time, and having kind of the clout of Valve behind it made people take notice, and it becomes like the precursor for one of my favorite games that I played at PAX West this year, even Superliminal, where it's like it's taking that idea of like, okay, let's come up with a puzzle game that is, you're walking around here and we're going to give you a gun, but it's not a gun. You're not going to kill anybody in this game. You're going to have to figure out where to shoot this gun to like open the path that you need to get, or to access the things you need to get. Like that was like much like Gone Home, kind of opening the door to short, very narrative-driven first-person experiences, and the era now we kind of like refer to as the walking simulator and stuff. I think Portal did that as well, and reinvigorated the puzzle game genre, I would say, by doing that, and led to
it definitely did.
One of my inevitable game of the years in The Witness. You very much see Portal's DNA within that game and stuff like that. So I think it is, and again, like all of that would be an argument for the first Portal, but I think Portal 2 takes all of that and accentuates what worked about that first game. That first game is very short. It's very I don't remember how long, but it's like 20 chambers or something like that, and it leans into the subversion of, oh, Gladys is really trying to kill you, kind of near the end of it. But with that as kind of the baseline of the second game, you can kind of take that as your starting point and just run with it like crazy. And they do, and they have a ton of fun with it. And I just very I very much appreciate what that game did, and I very much look at that game as, even though I played it originally on console, I look at that because of Valve and Steam and their lineage. I look at that as a PC game, um, uh, like first and foremost uh, itself. So anybody gonna? So Frank and Logan, you guys have the option to veto.
I think it's a great point, like what Logan and you had mentioned, where like we are kind of cutting off a lot of games and kind of modern gaming here, and like even some of my personal favorites I had written down for like PC were Hotline Miami and Grim Fandango. Like those are two games that I definitely kind of associate with that I really love. But and all the great games you guys mentioned, like Hellblade and Gone Home, but I definitely I'm cool with Portal 2 being on the list, and I'm gonna save my veto this time.
And Logan, you said
Yeah, I'm not going to veto it. I won't.
right. And Cameron, you mentioned that this is an episode where you very much would have wished you had the vetoes to use.
Yeah.
So if you had been able to veto this, what would you have put forth as kind of some of your definitive PC options?
I would probably, the number one game I would probably put forward is Warcraft 3, because Warcraft 3, not only was it an incredible epic RTS game, it was one of the first of what I would call like moving towards more modern style of PC gaming as far as like graphics and everything. Granted, it's dated now because the game's like 20 years old, but it's multiplayer initiated. It really brought into what we now know as Battle.net. It's multiplayer, different game types created created game genres. What we have with Dota and League of Legends as these lane-based. Sorry, I'm trying to think of what they're usually called.
MOBAs?
MOBAs, thank you. It created the MOBA genre. It created tower defense, like the tower defense genre as we know it today. It had some of the most creative game types in art, like just transforming an RTS into even more of like an action RPG or just an RPG in general. Just in its multiplayer facets, not to mention its incredible epic story that was so popular that it literally launched the idea for what we would then know as World of Warcraft. There's so much that I would put Warcraft 3 in there. I would put up World of Warcraft,
Yeah.
of course.
That's like other front runner. I mean, pretty much anything Blizzard, Warcraft, Diablo, any of that kind of stuff. Skyrim's
I
another
would make a bigger argument for Blizzard games right now, but I also want to remind everybody that
Free Hong Kong,
the revolution of our generation. So
yeah.
We can move on.
Yeah, no, that's fair. But like Skyrim would be another.
Skyrim on the PC with it's like reinvigorated the entire mod-based community.
Yeah, Stardew Valley is another like.
Stardew Valley. Oh my gosh, Trevor, stop naming games that I would want to put on this list rather than.
But I mean, I'm going through like my Steam library of the games that I put the most hours into, and like each of those are 300 plus hour games. But I think just the tightness of Portal 2 is why I wanted to put it on this list. So, all right, so that is our round 3. Super Mario Galaxy 2, Castlevania Symphony of the Night, Mass Effect 2, and Portal 2, a whole bunch of sequels making the list this week. Yeah, that's. I think we hurt some feelings, but I think we'll all live. It will be fine. So that's going to do it for this episode of That Ultimate Video Game List Show. You can follow all of us. You can follow Logan at LeftyLogie. Anything you want to plug, Logan?
You can go check out the first episode, probably the second episode, maybe more. I don't even know what the timeline looks like at this point. Of That Wanna Be Film Class. For sure, you can watch us talk about Mamma Mia and also iRobot and that motion picture film and the classic status that it is. You can go listen, obviously, to previous episodes of That Video Game List Show, which hopefully you have. If not, that's a weird decision to jump into episode 3. You can go listen to That Nerdy Site show. We've done a few episodes of that by the time you listen to this. And then you can also go check out Trevor's piece on the site, possibly Trevor's review of Luigi's Mansion 3, early review thoughts possibly of Death Stranding for me, depending on when this goes up. And then you can also, I guess it's going to be next week, so probably not. And then also you can go check out a piece I'll have on the site as well, independent of that. And then all the Twitch streaming that we will be doing as well on the site.
Great. You can follow Cameron at Rev Cabot, Rev C Abbott. How are you saying it, Cameron?
I say it Rev Cabot.
Rev Cabot. Makes sense. Anything you want to plug, Cameron?
Yeah, by the time this podcast goes up, I should have a new article over at handsomephantom.com. It is a reaction to BlizzCon in relation to another article that I posted, that was posted a little while back before BlizzCon, about kind of the modern time. Like, the first article is about the modern times that we live in based off of corporate company, or just corporations that have created strong partnerships with China for the sake of the audience and money, and kind of the price that they're paying now with the Hong Kong protests that are happening. And then my follow-up is kind of like a reaction to Blizzard's non-addressing of the actual situation, and kind of the super lackluster apology that was put out there.
All right. I look forward to reading that. You can follow Frank at Irrelevant Jokes. Anything you want to plug, Frank?
Yeah. I'm on every platform at Relevant Jokes, and I guess the main thing I'd want to plug at this time is the just follow our YouTube, That Nerdy Site. I'm going to be working on some cool stuff for that, and I think people should definitely check that out and subscribe. Look forward to some up-and-coming videos that'll be on there soon.
Great. You can follow me at Trevor J. Starkey. The things I would plug, Logan said I should have a Luigi's Mansion 3 review up on the site by the time this goes live. And I've been Twitch streaming The Outer Worlds over at twitch.tv/thatnerdysite. And having a fun time with that game. It very much gives me Mass Effect 2 vibes, which made its way onto this list today. You can follow all of us over at That Nerdy Site. Please, especially as we kick things off with this thing in this launch month, please like, rate, review, subscribe, follow us everywhere you can. Like I said, we should be on pretty much all podcast services at that point. If we're not, hit us up at That Nerdy Site or at Trevor J. Starkey, and I will look into getting us onto whatever podcast services we are not currently on. And yeah, if you're feeling extra generous, please support us over at the Patreon, patreon.com/thatnerdysite. That's going to do it for this show. Thank you to my panel. We will be back next week for round 4. As always, stay nerdy and be good to each other.